I'm going to assume you've already heard or read the comments made by Ranveer Allahbadia, which has caused all of the outrage, because I don't feel like repeating them and I'm not going to. But since it's been picked up by the news cycle, politicians, government, police have gotten involved, cases have been filed, and there's outrage on social media. The question that I'm asking is, was there a law that was broken at all? Does it merit any action, or is this just freedom of speech? Now, very quickly, Allahbadia has about 4.5 million followers on Instagram, 10.5 million subscribers on his YouTube page, but he was trending today because of a statement he made on a YouTube show called India's Got Latent. This is a show that is hosted by Samay Raina on his YouTube channel. They have 7.5 or 7.36 million subscribers, and on an average, they do about 30 million views per night. Now, there is a membership, and there's some content behind the membership paywall, but most of the content, or the bulk of the content, appears to be accessible without the membership. I'm given to understand that most of the jokes are sexual innuendo, just like what we've already heard. Thrown in, there are jokes about disability, about race, about caste, about mental health, but it's a very, very popular show. Arguably, among the largest shows right now on Indian YouTube. After the backlash, Ranveer has apologized. He has said comedy is not his forte. He has asked to be forgiven, and he's promised to learn and grow from this incident, but the outrage continues. Now, my take is in 3 parts, and I'll give it to you quite quickly. My first is about freedom of speech. Now, I must point out to you that our Constitution gives each of us freedom of speech and expression, but it's not absolute. There are reasonable restrictions, like there are on all of our fundamental rights. These reasonable restrictions, according to our Constitution, is about sovereignty and integrity of India, public order, contempt of court, defamation, decency and morality. Now, I don't know what the nature of the complaints that have been filed are, but my guess is that they involve decency and morality. We've seen this play out in the past. Remember, Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie was banned in India. Jaswant Singh had written a book about partition back in 2009. That was banned in India as well. Films have come under criticism. M.F. Hussain was hounded for his art. Munawar Farooqi was arrested for his art. And so this has happened in the past. But my take is that I believe in freedom of speech. I don't agree with Ranveer Allahbadia or Samay Raina. I don't agree with most of the content on YouTube, but that doesn't mean they need to be censored. I believe that this does not merit the denial of their rights, because we are a free speech state. And our Supreme Court agrees. Now, 10 years ago, in 2014, the Supreme Court, there was a case of PK, the film starring Amir Khan, that came before the Supreme Court. And the then Chief Justice, R.M. Lodha, had actually said, if you don't like it, don't watch it. He said, in matters of entertainment, if you restrict it, it will affect others' rights. Everything is on the internet. A few years ago, Arnab Goswami came before the Supreme Court, and D.Y. Chandrachud, who was Chief Justice then, said, if left to me, I would not watch the channel. But he said that is not reason enough to ban it. So the Supreme Court is very clear about the fact that freedom of speech exists for each and every one of us. But it's not without reasonable restrictions and not without responsibility. I want to point out to you that when we talk about entertainment, especially such mass, large-scale entertainment, like the views that this show gets, when you release films in India, you're allowed to release a film that has nudity and vulgarity and violence, but you have to tag it as adult content. That is the law. Now, YouTube has a policy where every creator has to self-certify their own content when they put it up. You're asked, is this content for 18 and above, or can everyone watch it? And you have to actively click on that button. And it appears in this case that Samay Raina, who owns this channel, had not clicked 18 and above and allowed for this content to be viewed by everybody. In fact, Ranveer's own apology confirms that this was open for everyone to watch. That is a problem. And that is a big problem, which means that you have your freedom of speech and you've used it without any sense of responsibility. Technically, YouTube also has a policy where if the self-certification has not been done correctly, that video can get flagged by another user and YouTube takes a look at it. It doesn't seem to have happened in this case. Even though it is such a large show, such a popular show, I don't believe it's been flagged, or YouTube doesn't seem to have looked at it. The second issue that I think is going to come up here, and this is my take, is government regulation. Now remember, last year in Parliament, the Union Minister of Information and Broadcast, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw, suggested tightening the existing laws and governing social media and OTT content. He had actually said that democratic institutions rely on editorial checks, but those editorial checks are diminishing over time with social media, and it's leading to vulgar content. So I believe that this incident is actually going to speed up a process of government regulation on content on the internet. So what Samay Raina has done is that he's actually maybe ruined the party for everybody, because the government is now going to shut things down. Samay Raina, though, appears to be like a child playing with a box of matches, not fully appreciating the power and the influence that he has, because what he's done with this show is draw attention to the entire space. So he's going to make content creation more difficult for everyone involved, not just himself. And my third point is of moral responsibility. Now, this is not the law. This is not a rule. This is just us as human beings, part of a society. There is a reason, I believe, why social media influencers are called influencers, because they influence the way people think and act, especially when these people are very young. Now, imagine a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old walking into your content because the YouTube algorithm has suggested it, and listening to these jokes that you've made about, I will give you 2 crore rupees if you perform oral sex right now, or Paji ki Baji, or some of the other stuff that I've noticed they've been saying. What poor examples and role models you make. What bad heroes you are. What terrible avengers you will make, because these are the examples you are setting. And I'm not even talking about the fact that this is the lowest form of sewage latrine level humor, and that you lack the skill and talent to write anything real, of anything of true quality, because freedom of speech is not about whether or not the joke was funny. Here I'm talking about your responsibility for the millions of people, the young minds who come to you every day. Like Nilesh Mishra pointed out, that there is no incentive for decency right now. I'd go a step further and say there's no incentive for integrity, or for intelligence, or for anyone who's doing it the right way, taking the trouble to put out content that is of quality, that is fact-checked, that actually helps people understand things better. The incentive is to say the most obscene, the most outrageous things and get the most number of views. So it's this terrible race to the bottom that we're seeing right now on Indian content. And we've seen it before. It was called TRPs. I was yelling at us from boxes on television at 9 o'clock. This somehow for me is so much worse, because at that point children would say, I'm not interested in, in the news, and they would walk away. But here you have very young people actually watching it, because there are no checks and balances. And at 30 million views a night, are you as powerful as Doordarshan in the 90s? Or in this case, you're not teaching us Mile Sur Mera Tumhara. You're making jokes about our parents' sex lives. As a society, maybe it's time to take a pause and ask ourselves how this entire content economy works, and if this is really who we are. Leave me a comment if you believe that this is freedom of speech that should be used responsibly, or if you believe a law has been broken and action should be taken.